Howdy, my name is Dane Madrigal, and today we're going to be talking about diminished and augmented triads from Tchaikovsky's Guide to the Practical Study of Harmony. So the first thing that we're going to actually be touching on today is the diminished triad, and more specifically we're going to be talking about the diminished triad in its first inversion. Now the reason that we're going to be talking about the diminished triad in its first inversion is because it is in the first inversion that you actually find a diminished triad in its most consonant form. The reason that it is in its most consonant form in first inversion is that because from the bottom of the chord you have a third and a sixth, where opposed to the second inversion where you have a fourth and then a sixth, and the root position where you have a third and a fifth. You might be asking yourself why this is so important. Well, it's because in a diminished triad you actually have a tritone or a diminished fifth. And the reason that you have this in there is because of reasons. This is future Dane, just letting you know when past Dane said reasons, he meant the major scale. He really did. Now there are actually two special cases where you can connect that first inversion of the diminished chord to different forms of chords in this standard version of voice leading. The first is when it precedes the tonic chord. Now when it precedes the tonic chord, we have to remember that we can't double the fundamental tone because it's also the leading tone. Therefore, it's always advisable in Tchaikovsky's guide to double the fifth. The reason for doubling the fifth is that it allows for more parsimonious voice leading. However, there is a bit of an exception to this whenever the doubling of the fifth is actually above the leading tone in four-part writing. Then we have to always be sure that that fifth is led downwards, so that way it avoids different forms of non-allowable voice leadings. The second case for usage is actually just when this first inversion of the diminished chord is being led directly into any other form of a triad from the scale of the major scale. That was a little bit redundant. But essentially what this means is that we're not actually treating the fundamental tone of this diminished chord, which is the leading tone, the way that we would in modern harmony per se, because now we're just treating it as a first inversion consonant chord that is directly leading into another form of chord from the major scale. So what Tchaikovsky actually tells us to do may seem a little bit counterintuitive, but he actually wants us to double the leading tone. So that way, by doubling the fundamental, we're leading the fundamental of a consonant first inversion chord into any other chord of that major scale. And now, even though this chapter was designated specifically to deal with diminished and also augmented chords, for some reason the way that Tchaikovsky chooses to address the augmented chord is actually really oblique, because all he says is that in minor it's too difficult right now, so hands off. And then when he talks about it in the case of the major scales, he basically just says we're treating it as a passing chord. But essentially we haven't really gotten addressed how a passing chord is used. So hopefully in the example that I'm about to do, it might become a little bit more obvious. So what you're witnessing here is actually me really struggling to complete a harmony exercise, because it's been actually like over a year since I've done one. So I apologize in advance for all the discrepancies, but I would think it'd be a good compositional exercise and analytical exercise to find all the places that I absolutely made a debauchery of this. But here is the example. And with that, that's really it for today. Obviously, I've been gone for a while. It's been over a year, so, boo-hoo to me on that one. But I hope to be actually coming back more regularly to this, just so that way I can deliver to you guys what you've been wanting for over a year, according to some comments that I've been getting every miscellaneous few months. And I hope that I'll be able to provide that to this community and go from there. But in the meantime, just so you know, you can always again subscribe to my email newsletter, so that way I'm able to keep in touch with you whenever there's something new that may not be on the YouTube channel. As always, you can follow me on Instagram, and also I have a Discord channel for you guys if you want to talk independently with one another, and I can chime in whenever. But other than that, peace.